What if you could turn your passion for helping others into a career that changes lives, starting with your own? Join Empower's Certified Professional Empower Coach Academy, accredited by the ICF and powered by Oregon State University. Our next cohort begins February 28th. Visit yesempower.com to reserve your spot today.
Welcome to Rewired. I'm your host, Tiffany Grimes with Empower Coaching and Training. Hello, and welcome back to Rewired and to 2026, folks. Rewired is the podcast where we explore the neuroscience of real change and how to rewire your mind for a more empowered, intentional, and fulfilling life, which is usually the theme for most of us as we enter into a new year. Many of us love to really think about this event where our goals are in front of us. We can kind of look back at where we've been, what we want to do, and there's all sorts of right and wrong ways if we look at that through the lens of neuroscience as to how to approach our goals, how to set those goals, how to successfully attain those goals. It's really a time where we think about, it's a new year, it's a new energy, it's new intentions, it's new resolutions. And yet for so many people, this is also the season of quiet shame. So we're going to talk about that quiet shame today and how to get out of that and how to get into some measurable success for the new year. Before we get into the podcast, I want to say a couple of things. One, I want to announce that we are in the recruitment period for our Empower Coach Training Academy. We are accredited as a level 1 program through the International Coaching Federation, and we are embedded within Oregon State University. It makes us a very unique program, and we are also proud to say we always work hard to make it a price point that is accessible for folks. So our start date for that is late February. If you have interest, we have info sessions every Thursday at 12 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. I will put the link in our show notes where you can sign up for one of those. You can also just go to yesempower.com and look under Coach Training Academy and get all the information there and sign up. You can also go to the webpage at Oregon State University and check it out there as well. The other announcement I want to make, as speaking about goals for the new year, I have, I'm the CEO and founder of Empower, and I have spent a lot of my energy over the last 12 years focusing on my business, and I've kept a really tiny group of folks that I coach so that my energy can still be in the coaching world and applying coaching and doing what I love. And it's also been in this building a business, which has also been a ridiculous amount of fun for me, a ridiculous amount of work and equally a ridiculous amount of fun for me. However, I wanted to announce that I do have 1 to 2 openings as we move into 2026 in my tiny coaching circle that I can open up to folks for individual coaching. So if you are interested in getting coached by me, please visit the website. Again, that's yesempower.com. You can click on coaching. You can find me under there and schedule a session where we can it's a free compatibility session just to see, are we a good match for each other? Do you want to work with me? Do I want to work with you? And we can see if that works. Anyway, I think that's it for my announcements. The last thing I guess I do want to share, I'll say it again at the end, is next week I get to interview somebody that I absolutely adore, Delma Castaneda. She is a coach with Empower. She is a amazing coach doing work in Empower and also outside of Empower, where she's working with people who are in relationships that might feel toxic and really empowering people as they make choices within that relationship, whether that is to stay or whether that is to go. And I'm anxious for our conversation with her. So join us next week as well. All right, let's get back to the very interesting topic of quiet shame as we think about moving into the new year. Because many of you, like me, have set goals before. I'm guessing if you're part of this podcast, you're part of that crew that we're always on the continuous improvement plan, thinking about loving who we are and also thinking about who we want to continue to become. So, if you've set goals for the new year or you've done that process before sincerely, earnestly, and then they don't stick, you might be feeling some of that quiet shame, or maybe you followed through for a few weeks. I want to say I live rurally. I live on this long stretch I live on a dirt road off of a long stretch of a paved road where there's loads of people who cycle it and run it and walk it. And we had a giggle on New Year's Day when we pulled out of our dirt driveway and onto that road and had to wait for 10 minutes as the amount of speed walkers and runners and cyclists made it by us. And we laugh because we see it every year. We start these goals, we have big intentions, we set them too high. We say, we're going to run every day for this amount of time. And then life happens. Or maybe you've achieved a goal. Maybe you had a big goal that you did achieve and it didn't feel like you hoped it would. So we kind of set all these pieces about these expectations about how we would feel once we've done these things. And then we get to that finish line and realize it's not the external work or the achievements that really help us feel resilient or self-compassionate or worthy or any of those things. That's really inside work. So today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to play around with some neuroscience-based ways to move into the new year. And really, when I say that, it's really about moving into goals, whatever time of year. So instead of helping you set bigger goals, I want to help you set braver ones. Goals that work with your brain instead of against it, which is how we do most goals. We're working against our normal flow of humanity. Goals that are rooted in who you are, not who you think you should be or what social media tells you you should look like or be like or feel like. Goals that create real, lasting, compassionate change. Not hustle goals, not fix yourself goals, because in case you aren't aware, you aren't broken. But these are rewiring goals. So let's dive in. Let's start with a little bit of truth. I'm going to say quote unquote truth or facts maybe. Your brain is not wired for radical, sudden, sustained change. These ideas that December, the end of December, I look like this, and then the next minute on January 1st, I will now look like this. That radical, sudden, big change is not generally the path to success. It doesn't mean it can't be, but for most of us, it is not the paved path to success. We are rather wired for efficiency and safety and predictability. From a neuroscience perspective, habits live primarily in the basal ganglia, which is the part of the brain that automates behavior to conserve energy. So it figures out, what are we doing regularly? And then let me automate this thing so that we're not thinking our way through it. We're not practicing willpower every time we come into this thing. Once something is familiar, the brain treats it as safe and kind of cheaper than something new, right? It's less investment of my time and energy to do something that I can predict. And this is absolutely true of habits that don't serve us. So sitting on the couch, engaging in toxic behaviors, engaging in toxic conversation or relationship, or any of those things, how we think about ourselves. Those are habits that even if they are harming us, if we've done them long enough, it is less cost intensive for the brain to do that than to go do something new. Something new feels vulnerable for the brain. It might feel very sudden for the brain, and it's the opposite of how our brain tends to operate. So what that means is as you try to dramatically overhaul your life overnight, literally from just the end of December to the beginning of January, your brain often interprets that as a threat, not a gift. So your prefrontal cortex is saying, no, this is a gift. This is the right thing to do. This is how I should be. This is what I am going to do and how I'm going to live. But the ancestral, more automatic part of your brain is going, I don't even know what to think or how to act or what to do or what will come after that. That feels very vulnerable and it feels unsafe. And my brain and your brain and all of our brains are designed to keep us safe. So we're actually working against ourselves. The brain, instead of coming along with you in this vulnerable ride, tends to resist. It tends to procrastinate. It forgets. It defaults, not because you're lazy, not because you're broken, but because your nervous system is trying to protect you from the uncertainty and the overload. I want you to really just capture that and give yourself some love. If you've been working towards some goal and you have made these deep lines in the sand and now I will be this way, and you did not successfully do that thing, give yourself a big love right now. Your brain was protecting you, especially if we have stored trauma or events that feel so threatening to our brain. We are kind of reactivating those survival modes of our brain and saying, no, let's get back to predictability. So you might want to pause just for a moment if you fall in that category, if you're having any ahas right now, and just love yourself. Forgive that judgment part of your brain, that default mode network of judgment, and just say, okay, let's start over and let's see if we can do this not in this big, bold, sudden way, but in a brave way that supports who you are as a human being, as a beautiful, wonderful human being. So all of this kind of gives us the understanding of why willpower-based goals are just so incredibly fragile. Willpower lives in the prefrontal cortex. So that is, if you put your hand on your forehead, you are playing with that prefrontal cortex, Dr. PFC. This is the part of your brain that gets tired when you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, when you're hungry, when you're emotional, when you're busy. And let's be honest with ourselves. If your life looks anything like mine, modern life is all of those things. I don't know that there is a day that goes by that I don't feel some level of stressed, overwhelmed of my schedule, hungry because I didn't have time to eat, or I'm trying to make different food choices, emotional. I've got tweens right now and teens and lots of things going on and grief and and I'm busy and every day consists of some level of those things. And so if I'm relying on just willpower to get me through, that is a finite resource. And that's a finite resource if my brain has all of the resiliency it needs. It's still finite, right? So if your goals rely on willpower alone, you're sitting on a very thin neurological foundation, and it will more than likely lead to failure and early failure. Honestly, when we look at the results of New Year's resolutions and big goals and dramatic goals that people set, we're not looking at a very high success rate. And this is why we can look at it from a neuroscience standpoint and see the reasoning.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Ready to make a real difference? Become a certified professional coach with Empower Coaching and Training. Our next CPEC cohort, accredited by the International Coaching Federation and offered in partnership with Oregon State University, starts February 28th. Spots are limited. Learn more at yesempower.com.
So real change happens when we shift from that force to really thinking about support. How do I support my brain? How do I support my body? How do I support old identities and mental models as I make this shift in my life? It's going to be shifting from shame to safety. So rather than shaming myself into change, so I shouldn't look like this, I shouldn't feel like this, what's wrong with me? We move to starting with who we are, meeting ourselves there, and creating a safe space for our brain to kind of step out of its comfort zone, right? So it might start with just affirmations of love or forgiveness for judgment of ourselves, or we're really creating this sense of belonging for ourselves. We belong and we're worthy. And in that place of love and safety, we want to create a different reality for ourselves. We shift from outcome to identity. So not just reaching the outcome, the number on the scale, the stamps in the passport, the income on the paycheck. Rather, we move to creating new identities. So I am a successful professional may become the identity as opposed to how much you're earning, right? Or identity like I seek adventure in my life. I am a person. I am an adventurer. I am an explorer. So building those identities, not just reaching a measurable outcome. Now, measurable outcomes are important. They help hold accountability. We'll talk about all of that, but we also want to be thinking about identity shifts and awareness because behaviors are coming from the beliefs that are built in our identity. So if we're just changing behavior, it won't last. And we also want to think about shifting from intensity to consistency. So it's not like I'm going to do this every day for 2 hours but rather like what will help me commit to this consistently? Is it 10 minutes a day for the first 2 weeks? Is it, whatever it is, what is that consistency where I'm going to change not just something I'm doing, but really how I'm living my life, how I'm creating my day and my time and what I base as a priority. All right, let's get into this a little bit deeper. We're getting into this. I hope you're getting excited. I'm going to put a lot of these notes in the show notes because I'm imagining, I don't know, I'm making up this story. I always listen to podcasts when I am walking or driving. And so I'm not really taking a lot of notes on podcasts. And I want you to have a lot of notes with this. So I'm going to put a lot in the show notes so that if you want to come back and grab some of these notes to help you as you're crafting your 2026, that you'll have those tools. All right, let's talk about shifting from outcome-based goals to identity-based goals. So we talked about that just now a little bit and the importance of that. So instead of I want to work out 3 times a week, for example, I'm using a lot of health examples because it shows up so often in the new year. So instead of saying, I want to do this 3 times a week, try this idea first. Now, again, we're not creating measurable goals, but let's not start with that. What we want to start with is what drives so much of our behavior and beliefs is identity. So try, I am someone who cares for my body with consistency and respect. So I want to play with that idea now. I'll have another example to share here in a moment, but I want you to think about this for just a moment. Very often we think about, I have to be the person that works out 3 days a week in order to see myself as the person who cares for my body with consistency and respect, right? So I have to have reached that goal before I see myself as enough. What our brain needs to do is to flip that script. Our brain needs to build a new identity so that our behaviors can stick. So if we say instead, right now, today, I am someone who cares for my body with consistency and respect. then I start to build beliefs around that identity. So if I am someone who cares for my body with consistency and respect, I believe that moderation of soda or alcohol or fried foods is important for me. That's a belief I have because it aligns with my consistency. And if that's important, then my behavior is I might drink less of those things, eat less of those things, and drink more water. See how that works? And then if I'm doing that, I can also begin to think about if I am a person who cares about my body with consistency and respect, my belief is moving my body is so important. It supports this. And I do it every day, right? That's a belief system. So now the behavior is, as part of my identity and my belief around movement, I go for a walk every day on my lunch break. Right? So now we're starting to get to more of the measurable behaviors, but we don't start there if we really want to build a path to success. So it's the opposite of what we tend to do. So another example of that, if we think about kind of workload. So what we hear in the coaching world, what I hear in the coaching world is something along the lines of, I want to stop overworking. And there's a couple things I want to play with in that statement. One, we are focusing on what we don't want to do, and we're not giving the brain a target to what we do want to do. So all we keep hearing, our brain keeps hearing, is overworking, overworking, overworking. So try something instead, like letting go of that statement altogether and saying, I am someone who honors my energy and nervous system. So we're doing a couple things there. One, we're talking about, we're giving ourselves a target for what we want. I often refer to this idea. I think I heard this from Brene Brown years ago, and I've used it a million times, so much so that I think of it as mine, but I think it actually came from her, where she said, we talk about what we don't want. It's like making a shopping list of everything you're not going to buy at the grocery store so that you remember what to buy, right? It doesn't work. Instead, what we write down is, here are the things I want to buy when I go to the grocery store, so that our brain has a target and we don't get distracted. It's the same thing with goals. If all we're saying is, this is what I don't want, this is who I don't want to be, this is how I don't want to be, we don't know if we are being what we want to be. So in saying, I am someone who honors my energy and nervous system, I'm giving my brain a target. Hey, here's actually what I'd like to start doing. And then the other thing we're doing in that statement is, it's an identity-based statement. I am someone who does this. I do this. So then if I do that, now my brain's going to organize the beliefs and the behaviors around that identity. When a behavior feels like who you are, it requires far less friction to maintain, which is to say, far less willpower, far less cost intensity for your brain. So the powerful question to begin the process is, who is the version of me this goal belongs to? So if you've kind of made a list or made a vision board and it's based in all of these behavior changes, go back and ask yourself, if I'm trying to work out 3 days a week, what version of me is this goal belonging to? And then play with that, right? So I am a big vision board believer. I love vision boards. I don't believe necessarily, well, I don't believe in just the kind of old system of manifesting where if you just believe hard enough, it'll happen. In fact, what we've learned through research is that when we just manifest, like we create that vision board and then we believe that it's happening and we leave the rest to the universe, we feel great. But what the research tells us is that we're actually much less likely to succeed because our brain is tricked into believing that we're already doing this. And so we're not working as hard to make it happen. So I do a vision board. I love doing it. My daughter and I did it on New Year's Eve. She's 13. It was really fun to do one together. I'm there with scissors and glue and magazines, and she's so modern with her, like, digital vision board on Canva. It's moving and animated. It was really cool just to see the difference. But anyway, for my vision board, I had things on there around, I had like this picture of me working, or somebody that I pretended is me working from this van. I really want to get like a travel van, and I do a lot of road trips and I work a lot during those road trips, and I love that combination. And so I put this up there, and I was talking to my daughter about that, and she was saying, "Oh, so you want to get a van?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do want to get a van, but the van, which is that measurable outcome, right? Do I have some kick-ass travel van? Doesn't mean I've created this feeling or experience in my life that's really about who I am. I want to fully experience this earth. I want to fully experience the people. That is based in my business. That's what Empower is fully experiencing people. And I also want to do it not at the cost of myself. I want to be traveling. I love new foods. I love new places. I love even the fussing that comes along with big trips and travel. I love that. And so for me, that picture is not about, I will get a van and I will work a lot and travel a lot. It is instead creating this identity. And so I wrote that around the picture, around the image. I am a person who fully experiences people and the world. And if that's the case, I'm not going to do that from my office 24/7. I want to get out into the world. So anyway, it's just an example. Play with it. Even if you've created a vision board, if you've got a bunch of goals, go back to them. If you haven't set them, start with this question: who am I becoming? Who am I ready to be? What part of me am I ready to fully develop and lean into? Start there. Start with identity, not just what you want to achieve, but who you want to practice, underlined and italicized and in quotations, who you want to practice becoming. Because the word practice and part of that, in front of that, reminds us that we then need to do the work, right? But we need to first give ourselves that target. We're going to shift from big leaps to micro wiring when we are thinking about our goals. Neuroplasticity, which is your brain's ability to rewire itself all throughout the many phases of our lives, happens through small, repeated, emotionally meaningful experiences. So if you are setting goals and then you look to that and you go, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I can't change because this is the way I've been doing it my whole life. That is just simply not true. Our brains are plastic. Our brains have plasticity. And so this neuroplasticity is our ability to create new neural pathways. Now, while big events, let's say trauma, for example, it can create rewiring in just that split second of life changing, right? For most of us, most of our rewiring happens through our repeated patterns, through small, repeated, emotionally meaningful experiences. Not grand gestures, not massive reinventions, but just tiny signals that repeat. That is how our brain actually creates and strengthens neural pathways. Every time you do a small action, your brain releases dopamine, not just as a reward, but as a learning signal that says, this matters, save this pattern. And I want to remind you as I'm saying this, this is happening all of the time for you, even if what you're practicing day in, day out is not in alignment with who you want to practice becoming. right? So the more that we are quick to anger, the more that we stonewall people, the more that we don't move towards what we want, what we're actually practicing is staying exactly as we are, and we are strengthening those neural pathways. So instead of going, I'm going to completely change how I eat, how I move, how I work, how I parent, how I live, starting on Monday or January 1st or whatever it is, ask yourself instead, what is the smallest version of this goal that still feels aligned and meaningful? And there's so much research on this and so many wonderful books on building habits and keeping those habits, but so small that maybe you cannot even fail at it, right? Something you can do that doesn't require a ton of time if time is your greatest challenge, or that doesn't take maybe any money at all if money is your greatest challenge. Tiny does not mean meaningless. Tiny means small enough that your nervous system doesn't resist it. It's a powerful way to support the human process of change. Tiny is the version of the change that your brain says, oh, I can do that, right? Like, I'm not going to commit to this big old thing that you have going on in the next 24 hours, but that little thing, that I can do. So what does tiny actually look like? Let's look at a few different areas. So instead of, if we think about parenting, for example, I shared that example earlier. Instead of, I'm going to be a more present, patient parent this year, which is big and nebulous at best, we're going to try setting that micro goal. Maybe it sounds like I'm going to take one slow breath before responding when my child is upset. Or maybe it sounds like I'm going to put my phone down for the first 5 minutes after my child gets home. Or maybe it's saying one specific genuine acknowledgement each day. I noticed how kind you were with your sister today, and I really love that. If we think about this when it comes to identity shifts, maybe the shift around this is, I am a parent who pauses before I react. I am a parent who leads with connection, not control. We can see how these identity shifts and these micro steps that support it really begin to help us move towards maybe this big, larger goal of being a present, patient parent. Let's look at it through one more lens of financial well-being. I want to spend just some time on this because I think it's really important. I think these, we start with these big, lofty goals. And so let's break these down. So here's another example. We'll look at it through the lens of financial well-being. So maybe the big goal that we're telling ourselves is, I'm going to get totally on top of my finances in 2026, right? Sound familiar to you? Which is great. It's awesome. It's also very big, and 2026 is a very long year. So we're busy in January. I'm going to start that in February, and February becomes June, and June becomes September, and we haven't moved forward, right? So let's look at first some ways that we can break that identity into some smaller identity shifts. So maybe, again, instead of saying, I'm going to be totally on top of my finances this year, we say something like, I am someone who has a relationship with my money, not a fight with it. Or I am someone who practices awareness around finances. So I'm starting these a little smaller, a little more specific. So if that's my identity, I'm going to start building beliefs like, if I'm building a relationship, that's a daily practice, right? A relationship is something that I'm engaging with regularly. So if I'm engaging with it regularly, what are the micro steps I can create around that belief? So maybe we're doing something like, I am looking at my bank account once a week without judging myself. I'm just going and observing. And I set that on my date. And maybe that's every Sunday with coffee. I go to the cafe, I order a lovely latte, and I look at my finances. Maybe it is setting up one automatic transfer, even if it's $5 into the savings account. Again, something that you cannot fail at. Like, can I afford $5 a month? Probably most of us listening to this can. So let's start with it. If you can't, maybe it's just like opening up the savings account. I'm going to get that savings account opened up by the end of February. Opening a budgeting app without changing anything. Again, just noticing, right? I'm just going to start this app. I bank with Chase. Chase has a app built right into it where we can look at basic places our finances are going. So we can just look. We're not saying we're going to change anything. We're just building a relationship with it, right? Or maybe it's writing down what you wish you felt about money. I love this one. For many of us, our relationship with money is a tense one, and we might be carrying that as a story from those who raised us and their relationship with money. It can be ancestral, absolutely. It can be generational for sure. So thinking about, how do I want my relationship to be with money? Let me start there. If I don't have $5 to transfer into my savings account, this is one I can start with. I wish to have ease, awareness, abundance, accountability. And what is that? Start building your relationship with money through visualizing what you want it to be. So those are examples of that kind of micro steps and what I want to encourage you to start with once you've played with identity. Okay, we are going to focus now on shifting from self-control to nervous system regulation, or rather control to nervous system regulation. And you cannot out-discipline a dysregulated nervous system. I just want to set the stage with that. You cannot willpower your way through a dysregulated nervous system. So we want to really learn how to move towards our goals through supporting who we are as human beings. When you're stressed, when you're overwhelmed, when you're anxious or depleted, your brain shifts into threat mode. That little amygdala pokes its little head out and starts giving us the messages that something is a threat or could be a threat, and we start activating our nervous system to that. In that state, long-term planning, consistency, and self-compassion simply go offline. If we are in a place where our sympathetic nervous system is activated and our lizard brain or survival brain is starting to become activated, we are in the moment. We are not planning for future. We are going into survival mode. We're going into fight, flight, fawn, freeze, all of these things that we do, and things like living in alignment with our values or practicing self-compassion or any of those things simply go offline. So sustainable goals aren't just about what you do. They're about the state you're in while you're doing those things. And the great thing is that we know how to help regulate a dysregulated nervous system. A regulated nervous system makes change easier. A dysregulated one makes everything harder for us, unless we are indeed getting chased by a rabid dog or a robber, right? If we're not, then what we want online is our parasympathetic nervous system. So goals that stick often start with things like the foundation of who we are. We need more rest. We need more breath. We need more support. We need kinder, gentler words to ourselves. We need more margin for error and grace when it comes, not if. I want to leave you with a practice you can do today. You don't need to buy a new planner. You don't need to download a new app that I've just been encouraging you to do. You just need a quiet minute and a little honesty. So again, this might be where you listen to it right now and then come back and practice this when you can give yourself a gift of a few moments to focus inward. So first, what I want you to do is name what's true for you. I want you to ask yourself, what feels most alive, honest, or important for me right now? And this shifts us from thinking about what we should be looking like and how we should be living our lives and how we should be parenting and how we should be doing all these things into really just an inward dive to say, what's alive for me? What is just speaking to me right now? What is pulling my attention? What feels really uncomfortable for me right now? Not what's impressive, not what's culturally rewarded, not what's going to look great on your social media, but what actually matters to you in this season. Write down one or two areas. That's it. That's all you have to do. Or have that conversation with a BFF. I have a wonderful best friend. We talk every Sunday on the phone. So it'd be a great question we could give to each other. Hey, let's talk about this. I'm going to talk about mine, you talk about yours, and we'll kind of listen to each other and ask further follow-up questions to get us a little deeper in this. The second step is choose an identity, not a task. So for each area, as you're highlighting what's speaking to you, what's important to you, what's alive for you right now, begin to think about identity and not just task, behavior, action. So this year, you can say something like, I am becoming someone. I prefer to hold it as truth already. So I am someone who has built a relationship with my finances. I'm saying that. If I'm saying I am becoming, and some people just feel more comfortable saying that, and if that is your jam, do it. But what I know to be in partnership with the statement I am becoming is that it's often kind of a buffer. It's like, I don't want to totally claim that yet. I don't want to totally commit to that. I don't think I'm totally worthy or capable or able to do that. And so I think by just saying I am, we start to build that identity. And then we practice saying it. I am someone who builds a relationship with my finances. Now, very often, again, we don't say that because we think it has to look like, and that means I have a very healthy savings account. That doesn't have to be the story. The story about being someone who cares and has a healthy relationship with my finances can be that I'm thinking about the type of relationship I want to have. I'm beginning to observe my patterns and my habits, right? So we get to define that. So I say, be bold, claim it. I am someone who. So finish that sentence around these areas that are bringing you alive. So examples are, I am someone who listens to myself before I override myself. I am someone who treats rest as productive. I am someone who speaks to myself with kindness. I am someone who practices courage in small ways. Let it be human, folks. Let it be real.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Ready to level up how you lead at work and at home? Empower Coaching and Training brings brain-based coaching, mindfulness tools, and real-world strategies you can share with those you serve and live with. Get started now. Visit us at yesempower.com.
Step 3 in this process is to choose then one tiny action. And what I would just bridge before you get to action is to think about, and you can write it down if you'd like. I don't have the step in there, but think about if you claim this identity, then what beliefs start to surface? And any belief is important. So if the belief is, that's not true, I'm not a person who does that, capture that, play with it. Well, how am I defining success here? How am I defining kindness or productivity or rest? So before we get, or maybe before, sometimes as we're choosing those tiny actions, notice or purposefully write down the beliefs that you're ready to release, that no longer support this new identity that you've been practicing, and perhaps new beliefs that you want to bring in. I am worthy of this. That's a belief. I am worthy. I am capable. I get to define success. That's a belief system I can wrap into this identity. And that's really going to help me as I start to create my tiny steps. So remember, the tiny steps are small enough that it feels doable on a hard day in your life. Think about your life and those hard days. What are you going to do no matter? It's going to be simple enough that it doesn't require motivation. It's going to be aligned enough that it feels meaningful. That's your practice. This is not performative. There's not a judge at the end that says you did it or you didn't. And you get to let that go. This is about you and your practice that creates your moments, and your moments that create your days, and your days that create your life. And the final step in this 4-step process, I'm going to send your way, again, it'll be in the show notes, is measure in awareness, not in achievement. Instead of tracking perfection, track awareness. And let me give some examples of this. So, not did I do it right every day? I said I was going to do this every day for 30 minutes. I didn't. Yesterday it was only 5, and the day before that, right? Then we start to notice the failure. Rather, think about all of this, the failures and the successes and the achievement and the struggles and all of that. Think of those as data points. This is all, if we get away from success being defined as I'm doing this every single day, and rather thinking about this is a journey I'm on and I'm supporting my human experience to move towards this, then all of these things, if I'm not doing something every single day and I said I was going to, let me come into that with curiosity. Okay, what's important for me to notice on these days? Did I notice when I didn't do it, what was present for me, or my mindset, or my thought process, or the people I had surrounded myself with? Did I return instead of quit? The next day, did I come back and try this again? I did. That's resilience. Beautiful. Let me build on that. What did I say to myself in those resilient moments that got me to come back the next day? Did I learn something about myself, about this goal I've set, about belief systems I have? We're measuring in what am I learning about me as a human being as I move towards this goal. Now, you should see my calendar. I have so many things that I track. So I get wanting to track, like, did I do it? I do those things for sure. What I don't do is try to say this is successful or it isn't, rather, okay, look at this pattern. Like, I never get this done on Tuesdays. All right, what's happening with Tuesdays? Or whatever it is. So it's not about not tracking at all. Some of us really thrive in that, myself included. But I think it's best to think of it as like, how am I measuring this holistically, and how am I thinking about success? We really want to come to that with that curiosity. These are all data points that are helping me move towards my goal. So think of change and how it is becoming integrated instead of just imposed, right? And now everything's different. And you're either going to succeed or you're not. That is not a platform that your brain will most likely find suitable for change. If you are entering this year feeling hopeful, share with me how. Oh, the news is so hard and challenging right now. I was just listening to someone the other day who was saying they're feeling so much hope because they've accepted this moment that, like, these big global struggles and challenges and atrocities that are happening are, for most part, out of their control. And so the hope has started coming from what can I do right now, today in my community? And they've been engaging in delivering food to help folks who need it. They're in letter writing campaigns. They're building hope as a practice purposefully. So if that is you, beautiful. And if you're entering this year feeling tired and cautious or a little skeptical, first, just, welcome to the party. That's okay too. You don't need a new you. I just despise that little phrase that comes out so often in the new year, new you. No, you are wonderful. You are so epic. And now let's think about who you also want to continue to become. You don't need more pressure. None of us do, not ever, but certainly not now. And you don't need to fix yourself, my beautiful person. You are not broken. You need safety, you need clarity, you need compassion, and you need practices that honor how your brain and nervous system actually work. Your goals will be yours. They're not going to match anybody else's. They are designed for you, around you. That's how we rewire. That's how we grow. That's how change becomes something we live, not something we chase. Don't start with you not being enough and that you have to do something to be enough. Start with you, just perfectly, beautifully, wonderfully you, and how you want to continue to grow and build upon your life and your development in this new year. Join us next week for our great conversation with Delma. And be sure to check out the website if you're interested in working with me directly. Take care. Thanks for tuning in to Rewired, where neuroscience meets real life change. If you enjoyed today's conversation, I'd be so grateful if you take a moment to leave a 5-star review. Your feedback helps people discover the tools, insights, and inspirations they need to create lasting change. While you're leaving that 5-star review, please also subscribe and share an episode with a friend. Remember, the way you think shapes the way you live. Every intentional thought, every mindful choice rewires your brain and your life. So go live intentionally, live thoughtfully, and never underestimate the power of your own mind to transform your world. Until next time, this is Tiffany with Empower Coaching and Training. Stay curious, stay empowered, and keep rewiring for real change.
Every family has challenges, and every parent deserves support. At Empower Coaching and Training, youth and parenting coach Jasmine Chandler helps parents and young people find clarity, connection, and practical tools that make a difference. Visit yesempower.com to connect with Jasmine and explore our team of incredible coaches today.